Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us. If you are a new or a regular viewer and haven't subscribed to us yet, please consider doing so. It really helps us provide more quality content on a regular basis. Also remember, you can always change your mind if you don't like the video. In April 2013, my friend and I went to the movies and then decided to walk around at around 10:45 p.m. We thought it would be a good idea to take a shorter way through the old schoolyard of our abandoned school. The school looked really run down. While walking through the schoolyard, we thought it would be cool to try to go inside the building and explore a bit. The school has two parts, like an L shape if you look from above. It's 3 stories tall and has 3 doors to get in. When you go in through the main door, you enter a big hallway that connects the 2 parts of the school. Each part of the school has stairs at both ends of the hallways that take you to the different floors. We found a window near the entrance of the lower wing that was wide open, so we went inside easily. We were in the basement now. We used our cell phones as flashlights and made sure not to shine them towards the windows, so no one would see us. Even though nobody was using the building anymore, there was still a lot of stuff left scattered around. We found all sorts of things down there: musical instruments, uniforms, even a pool table and chairs. We were just checking out each room to see if there was anything interesting. After about 15 minutes, we went upstairs to the first floor. Now we were in the main hallway. There was this big tarp, or plastic sheet hanging there, dividing the hall and the lower wing for some reason. I think it was there for construction work. We walked down one of the hallways and checked out the classrooms. Every room had been damaged, either by vandals or water, so everything was broken or rotting. Looking back, we were lucky the floor didn't fall apart under us. We had just left the 3rd classroom and were in the hallway when we heard someone moving the tarp and plastic sheeting in the main hall. It wasn't the wind or anything like that. We could tell something was actually moving it. We also heard footsteps, but they sound a bit weird, not like regular walking. It sounded like someone was walking fast and then slow, and then fast again. We stayed behind the door in the classroom, not making a sound, for about 2 minutes. But we didn't hear anything else, so we thought it might have just been the wind or some random noise. We walked through the hallway and up the stairs at the other end of the main hall to explore the 2nd floor. We heard noises again, but we thought it was just the wind, so we didn't worry much. After exploring the rest of the hallway, we decided to go down the staircase that led from the 2nd floor to the hall. Halfway down the stairs, there was this flat area before the next set of stairs, and this is where things got interesting. We could see the plastic moving, and we heard scratching sounds. We paused for a moment, listening closely. Then, I decided to take a look around the corner to see what was making the noise. What I saw terrified me. There was some sort of creature there. It was thin and almost completely naked. It didn't seem to have any clothes on. Its hair looked really pale, like a dead body, almost completely white. The first thing I thought of was that it looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, but just bigger. It was crouching down, scratching the floor, and making growling, groaning noises as it breathed. It was facing away from us, so I stood there frozen, just watching for a while. Then, I stepped back and pointed at the thing, looking at my friend. He peeked around the corner, and right away, his face changed to a mix of horror and shock. It was kind of comforting to know he could see it too. We stood there for about 20 seconds, just watching this thing, and then something straight out of a horror movie happened. My friend started moving back slowly, and accidentally stepped on a piece of glass that cracked loudly. This startled the creature, and it quickly turned its head to look right at me. And we dashed all the way back to the basement to get out. The whole time, it felt like that thing was right behind us. When we got back to my friend's house, we sat down and talked about what we saw, making sure we both saw the same thing. The only thing I can think of to compare it to is Gollum. I get it if you don't believe me, but I promise it's true, and my friend still backs me up on it. We saw it well enough to know it was shaped like a person, but it didn't really look human. The only thing I can think of is that maybe it was a homeless person who ended up in the abandoned school for some reason. But this happened in northern Norway during winter, and you can't survive long without clothes in that kind of weather. It could have been some kind of animal that got inside, but we got a good look at it, and it didn't look like any animal I've ever seen before or since. I have no clue what it was. I usually think rationally and go for the simplest explanation, but we definitely saw something strange. I don't know, and we still haven't figured out what it could have been. I live in a countryside place in Honduras, which is in Central America, and it's known for having lots of spiritual stuff happening, even more than many other places. People there often experience strange things that are hard to explain. So when I was in 4th grade, people would tell stories about a creature that looked like goblins or leprechauns. They said it lived deep in the jungle or forest and would snatch up kids. Initially, I thought it was all made up. But when I look into it more, I found out these creatures were indeed real. They seemed to have a strange power to mess with time, making kids confused and easier to snatch. I learned this by talking to many older folks and families whose kids had been taken. Many stories share a similar theme. Some kids managed to escape this manipulation, like me. But before it happened to me, children would return home without their siblings or friends, saying they lost them near the well. The grown-ups would ask the kids where the well was, but every time they tried to show them, they couldn't find it. Instead, they end up near rivers or streams where there was no well, and the missing kids were still nowhere to be found. The situations with the missing kids were all alike, and they were never found. Now that you understand the background, I used to think it was just strange until I was about 9 years old. One day, some friends and I decided to go swimming in the river nearby. We swam for a bit until we drift downstream a bit. We found a spot that looked clear with sand and small trees, so we decided to get out there. This spot was deep in the forest. I walked along the clear area and saw a tiny path leading to a clearer spot. In the middle, there was an old-looking section of jungle that stood out. Then I noticed the well. But no matter how much I walk, it felt like the well was getting farther away instead of closer. I tried again, but this time I start hearing voices in the background, like people talking. I quickly realized that this must be what the kids were talking about. When I turn around, the river was gone, and the trail seemed endless. I panic and start running, closing my eyes and praying for God to take me home. As I ran and cried, the laughter faded away, but I still felt like something strange was watching me. I got out of the river, but my friends couldn't find me. They thought I had gone home, so they left after swimming for half an hour. But for some reason, I spent 3 hours there. It still confuses me. When I grew up, I got brave enough to check if the well and the trail were real. Turns out, they weren't. I never saw anything unusual, but I figured out that something really strange happened, something I couldn't understand. It messed with my sense of time and space, making everything confusing. It must have been like what the other kids went through, because I heard laughter when I tried to run away. What really helped me get out of there was closing my eyes and asking God to take me home, and it worked. But when I got back, it was much later than I thought it would be. I began working in sawmills in 2007. My first job was at a portable sawmill in southwest Washington state. The mill was right in the middle of the forest. It was built in the early 1970s, and even though it hadn't been around for very long, it already had a lot of interesting history. I worked the late night shift on weekends, from 2:30 to 4:30 in the morning on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I had a job called a trim drop operator. My partner was Pete, and it was just the two of us in our area. We took turns working throughout the night. One of us would handle the drop, where we got rid of the bad boards, pieces of garbage, and anything else that couldn't be made into good quality wood. The good boards went into a system of chains and pulleys called a lugget, and then they passed through a scanner and a trim box to cut them the right length. After that, they were taken to the sorter. Meanwhile, one of us sat at a control desk about 20 feet away, watching screens that showed how the machine was working. We switched roles every few thousand boards to avoid getting tired. One night, I was working at the drop, and Pete was relaxing at the control station, reading the newspaper. Everything was going as usual when I look over and saw him staring at the monitor for the equipment, looking confused. Then he suddenly got up and walked over to the trimmer saw box, looking around it. Then he came back looking worried, sat down, shrugged, and went back to reading. This happened again, and now I was curious. I stopped the flow of lumber and walked over to him, asking what was wrong. There was a man standing at the outfeed. I went to check, but by the time I got there, he had disappeared, he said. This didn't make sense because that area wasn't reachable unless you stop the machine and activate a walkway that uncover from the outfeed of the saw box. So I asked Pete to show me where he saw the guy. He pointed to the platform, looking a bit annoyed. I shook my head and chuckled, then went back to work at the drop. Pete kept watching the monitors, his newspaper tossed aside. But just 5 minutes later, he suddenly got up and dashed around the saw area. That's when I stopped working and joined him, but when we arrived, there was nobody there. He pointed across the wide lumber table to the platform on the other side of the machine and shouted, "Who's over there?" But once again, there was nobody there. After a minute of searching, we decided to return to our stations. I walked back to the control station and checked the monitor, but there was nothing unusual. Pete followed me shortly after. Just as I reached the drop to start working again, Pete shouted again. I turned around and saw him poking at the monitor, shouting for me to come back. I hurried over and looked at the monitor, and there he was, just as Pete said. The monitor was small and not very clear, but we could make out a man standing on the platform Pete had mentioned. He wore a tin hard hat and a very dirty, worn-out button-up long-sleeve shirt, with the sleeves either rolled up or torn off. Everything he wore was dirty, and he had on thick, dark denim jeans. He was standing there, leaning on the handrail and watching the lumber come out of the saw box. "Stay here," Pete shouted as he sneaked back down to the outfeed area. He was trying to catch the guy in the area where you're not supposed to be during operation. I glanced between Pete and the monitor as Pete reached the saw box. Suddenly, the man in the corner looked up at the camera and then disappeared right before our eyes. I completely freaked out. I felt a cold shiver down my spine, and all the hairs on my arms stood up. I ran as fast as I could to Pete, shouting, "That's not a guy. It wasn't a person at all," I exclaimed in shock. Pete stood there, speechless, staring at the platform. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling confused and disturbed. Pete thought for a moment, then suggested we should tell our foreman about what happened. We walked back to the operator's station, and Pete picked up the radio mic to call the foreman. We waited anxiously until the foreman arrived, ready to dash back to the saw box if we spot the strange figure again. After about 5 minutes, the foreman showed up, and we stopped running to explain what we had witnessed. The foreman didn't seem surprised. In fact, he was smiling. He told us that what we saw was just one of our old workers, a long-time presence at the mill. Back in the late 1970s, we had a worker who ran the chip bin station. One day, he got too confident and ended up buried in a pile of wood chips. Sadly, he couldn't get out in time and was crushed and suffocated. The foreman explained that he was one of the few workers here who wore a tin hard hat as a tribute to his earlier job as a logger in the forest. Other workers have also seen this ghostly figure wandering around different machines, just watching the lumber being processed. This happened to me and my friend when we're both about 23 years old. We decided to go camping for 2 nights in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. We both really like being outside, and we spend a lot of time camping, hunting, fishing. So we walk about 5 miles to a little lake and made our camp on a small beach. Not many people come here, so we didn't think we'd meet anyone. The first night, we just sat around the fire. Around 10:30, we saw a flashlight across the lake. It was a bit strange, but we didn't worry much about it. But as time passed, the flashlight kept moving closer to our campsite. We talked about who might be out there in the woods at night, and we didn't really want someone unexpected to show up. When it seemed like the person or people were coming towards our camp, we quietly moved into the nearby woods to see who was coming. We didn't think there would be any problems, and we definitely didn't want any, but we thought it would be smart to be cautious, just in case. Then, the moment we were waiting for arrived. The flashlight came close to the light of our fire, and we saw it was just one man. He had a beard and looked like he was in his mid-40s, but the scary thing was, he had a shotgun with him. He walked around our campsite a few times, then went into our tent. He searched around for a minute, and then came out and started shouting, "I know you're out here. Why don't you come say hello?" My friend and I stayed still under a hemlock tree about 50 yards away. That's when the man started shooting his shotgun into the woods, not too far from where we were hiding. He also swung his flashlight around several times. It felt like a long time before he finally grabbed my friend's backpack and some clothes we had drying near the fire and threw them into the fire. After a while, the man moved away from where he had been for a bit, but we wait until his flashlight was on the other side of the lake. Then we quickly grabbed everything we could fit in the backpack and ran off. It was about 2 or 3 in the morning by then. We ran along the trail with our flashlights and got back to my car just as the sun was rising. We went straight to the police station and told them what happened. We also talked to some forest rangers. That's all we did. But I haven't heard anything back from the police since then.